Okay, so first off, how old were you when the riots occurred?
I had just turned 22 years old.
And like, where were you when it happened? When everything?
When everything started, I was actually at work, and we were wrapping up the day, and there was rumors. There was, phone calls being made. Now you got to understand, this is before YouTube and cell phones and Twitter and all this other stuff. So it was more word of mouth, because the Rodney King trial was on TV, and so it had just, I would say probably around 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, somewhere around there, the verdict came down and the officers were acquitted. And so, people really assumed, and I was one of them, that it wasn't going to end that way, meaning that the officers that were accused of beating Rodney King were going to be, sent to jail. And I think the more especially the African American community took it as a slap in the face, and it was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. Yeah. So there was a lot of talk, and talk turned into anger and demonstrations in one part of town, and in another part of town, young people took inappropriate action, and they started beating people and going crazy.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe that it started, like, it was more of the video that got things started, that was played on the news, or do you think...
I think that had a lot to do with it. I think that the fact that there was video evidence of this man being beaten, like a dog, if you could even beat a dog that way. You don't even beat animals that way. And, to compound that there was a trial, and they were exonerated. And it's like you have a video, and that's, I think, what set a lot of people off, and it became a racial thing because most of the police officers were white, with the exception of Briseño. And it was like, well, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore, kind of thing.
Yeah. So how did that affect your life that day, and also after that?
My life that day, I never, ever, ever imagined something that horrific happening in my neighborhood where I grew up, and the neighborhoods that I worked in, involving the kids that I worked with. There was so much ruined for a long time after that. There were no supermarkets to go to. There wasn't a movie theater to go to. Just the simplest of things, the corner drugstore to go and get a soda or something burned to the ground. Since then, I think it's offered people opportunity to speak more, to vent more, to not let things bottle up so much to where they have to, or they feel they have to blow up the way they did. I think more people are willing to listen now, as opposed to 22 years ago or 20 years ago.
Yeah. Do you think this has affected other things in LA, like the police force, or?
Oh, absolutely. A direct result of the riots was the Warren Commission, and certain things that the LAPD was doing. Shortly after that was a Rampart scandal. So there was a lot of turmoil within LAPD, and I think there's a lot more what's the word? I think they're more open about policies and procedures, and there's more people looking at what and how LAPD operates. Not just LAPD, but also the LA County Sheriff's Department, as well as other small municipalities.
Yeah. Do you feel that LA's tried to kind of cover up these riots? Because everywhere I've gone, people either don't want to talk about it, don't know it's happened.
A cover up is not the word. I think people want to forget. And I think a lot of people have chosen to forget. I'm not one of them. I think that whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It depends on what parts of the city you go to and you ask. Some people are still angry about it. Some people are like, it happened, I'm done with it. My parents were here when the 65 Watts riots were around. And you would think that it was just in Watts, but that really spread out to most of not a lot of part of the city. So, and they still talk about it, you know. So it just really depends on your audience and who you ask. But I think some people are just kind of wanting to forget about it. Others are willing to talk about it so that we don't have another LA riots again. And I think it's important to keep dialogue open for that same reason.
Yeah, because I talked to the police and I tried to go to the LAPD. They did not want to talk about it.
No, and because a lot, you know, to them it's a black eye for them because the riots were as a direct result of something that they did. And so yeah, I don't imagine that they would want to talk about it. I can tell you how it went down for me working for a nonprofit with a youth development agency. We left and there was a lot of people on the streets. We clocked out of work about 3 o'clock. And there was a lot of buzz and, you know, like I mentioned earlier, people talking, and I'm driving home and I'm seeing, you know, protest signs and, you know, residential areas. Anybody who's driving a car was honking because there was signs, you know, people angry. And I got home in time to see Reginald Denny being beaten on the corner of Florence and Normandy. And that's when everything started going crazy, and it's helicopters and sirens and fires. I lived in a suburb of LA named Cudahy, and you can smell the smoke, you know, and I'm probably 10 miles from where everything happened, 10 or 12 miles. You could see the fires. The next morning, I start work at 6 in the morning. As I'm driving to work, the minute I crossed Alameda Boulevard, which is where, you know, most of the train tracks are, and that's kind of the outskirts of the city of LA proper, the ash was falling. There was cars burned out all along Vernon Avenue, which was the road I took in to go to work. And it was literally like being in a war movie. There was businesses still burning. There were people looting, still walking around with stuff. And it was embarrassing to me because I was a resident of that neighborhood. That's my community. And I know the people who own that store. And for, you know, for it to get out of hand that bad where they're burning down the only business in the neighborhood and, you know, walking around with, you know, loads of stuff. And then for the next couple of days, you have people that don't even live in the city of LA that are coming down like vultures on different businesses and just, you know, looting, and then coming back and saying, look at all the cool stuff we got. But there's no anger, there's no frustration over what happened to Rodney King. And I think that's what happened in a lot of neighborhoods, is you have these outsiders coming in trying to score something, and they had no idea why there was so much anger. One other thing that came out of that was, you know, where we are right now, we're in Boyle Heights in LA. Down the street here on Soto and Olympic is one of the oldest Sears and Roebuck companies, you know, retail chain store. During the first night of the riots, there was people coming from different neighborhoods trying to break into the Sears. The residents from Boyle Heights formed a chain around, arm in arm around this store, and said, not in our neighborhood. You're not coming here to burn down our store or loot the store. And that didn't make the news. You know, that made the talk of neighborhoods. And so, you know, you have different spectrums. You have people who are fighting to keep their own. You have people that were fighting to get something out of this tragedy. There was many people that grabbed the spray can and wrote on their business, you know, black-owned business, because so many Koreans were being targeted. You know, not too long before the riots, there was a young girl who was shot by a Korean store owner, and she also was exonerated. She didn't go to jail or anything like that. So there was a lot of tension and a lot of anger, you know. And then you had Korean store owners who said, you know what, we're not here to harm anybody. We're just here to make a living. We're not here to hurt anybody. And so they took up arms also, and they stood on their rooftops of their businesses with AK-47s and said, not in my neighborhood. So there was different, I mean, there was just so many different battles within battles. You know, there was a statement that needed to be made, but I think people got out of hand. And then on top of that, there was, you know, people that, you know, carpetbaggers that were coming down here to take advantage of a situation that was already critical.
Yeah, and during the riots, the police kind of took a, I'd say, calm approach. They just stood with their shields and they marched, you know, inches at a time. Do you think that was the right way they should have handled it, or should they have tried to, you know, take more action? Because in them not moving, they didn't exactly, like, save people or help people, but they still tried to control it.
They were stuck between a rock and a hard place, because the whole reason the riot started was because of use of force on their part. So can you imagine being there trying to defend different things and then realizing, if I swing my billy club, visions of Rodney King again. So there was only so much they could do. On top of that, they were completely outnumbered. So there was only so much they could do, and a lot of them took a lot of flack because business owners were like, "Hey, you're not stopping them. You're not stopping them." But if they tried, it was like trying to, you know, it was a pebble in the ocean and trying to hit something. So it was a fight I don't think they could win. My brother was in the National Guard at the time, and he was mobilized, and he was given the responsibility of guarding City Hall. And guarding City Hall, there was bomb threat after death threat after bomb threat. Cars, you know, revving up and run and trying, acting like they were going to ram through. And you know, they had orders not even to load their ammunition. So all they could do was just kind of, it was just kind of a show of force, because there was that fear that, you know, something was going to get out of hand and it was going to get even worse. As it is, I think the riots lasted about 4 days and 3 nights. And I don't remember how many people died, but, you know, a lot of people died. So it was pretty intense and a pretty scary time. There was fires going on. There was just a lot of anger, so much anger. And I think it was pent up for so long, and that it just blew up.
Yeah, you know? How was your mom with that whole thing? Like,
my mom was scared. My dad was scared. My sisters were still living at home. I was 22. My other sister was 21, and she was still in college. My younger sister was 18 and about to finish high school, and so we had to kind of keep her under wraps, because she was like, "Oh, well, I'm going to go out there and protest too," and I'm like, "Nah, dude, this is not." Nobody's protesting anymore. Everybody's kind of just, you know, out for their own. And Mom's was like, you know, you guys need to stay here, you know, and kids in my neighborhood coming by, you know, and that's the part that was embarrassing to me, was that, "Hey, aren't you gonna go get some stuff?" And I'm like, "Nah, dude, this isn't about stuff. This is about, you know, what's right." And, you know, yeah, they shouldn't have gotten exonerated, but why are we burning up our own neighborhoods?
Yeah, they're doing it to themselves.
And that's what, you know, and so some of us were out there saying, "Stop, you know, there's no reason for this. You're just burning. We don't have a market as it is. Now you're burning the only one we have."
Yeah.
And I kid you not, on Central Avenue and 43rd Street, there was one supermarket. It's called Family Farms. It's still there. They rebuilt it. But Family Farms burned down. And Family Farms had prices that in that neighborhood you could afford. The closest Ralph's supermarket was about 4 miles away on Vernon Avenue and Figueroa. And, you know, sometimes you couldn't afford Ralph's, you know, or Lucky back then, or you know, Vaughn's. There was no Vaughn's. There was no supermarkets, you know, big chain supermarkets in our neighborhoods. And a lot of us didn't have cars. We had bikes, or MTA, RTD, the bus. So, you know, you burn down the liquor store, you burn down the supermarket, you burn down the gas station, you tried to burn down the school. what's left for us once you're done with acting stupid? There wasn't a lot left, you know. And the positive thing that came out of that was we had kind of somebody woke up in DC and said, well, we're going to have to pump some money back into these communities.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody said, don't just give us money, give us ideas, give us jobs, you know, do something different. And so the Conservation Corps, the LA Conservation Corps, which I work for, took the lead, you know, and said, look, we work with people that are 18 to 24 years old. And then the Junior Corps, which was 13 to 17. Help us, and we'll help these kids. And so programs were started. You know, there was a program started where kids that were disadvantaged came out to the Corps and participated in restoration projects. We went out and we cleaned up areas that were burned down.
Mm-hmm.
We went out and educated the public about, you know, how to, something so simple as to who to call when you needed to have somebody clean up your alley or paint out graffiti. Just simple things, you know. The whole tree planting programs that we have now, they were intact probably since 89, 90, but there was even more money and opportunities that came about, and we're able to plant more trees and make it a bigger draw. So they pumped money into the neighborhoods to try to clean it up, you know, low-income housing, low-interest loans to these people who lost their businesses. So there's been a lot of change. There's been a lot of improvement, but it shouldn't have taken such a drastic thing for it to happen. You know, and that's the sad part. But you know, there's a silver lining, but there's still a lot. You know, people didn't have to die. People didn't have to lose their businesses, their homes, in order for us to make improvements.
Yeah. Do you think that those positive changes, like the money and everything, do you think that still would have happened if these riots didn't occur?
Sadly, no. I don't think so. No. Because I think that, you know, as a parent, you know, your kid cries, you're like, oh, you know, you warm up a bottle and you stick a bottle in their mouth and hopes they stop crying.
Mm-hmm.
That's reality. You know, you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're tired, you need to go to work the next day, but your kid's crying and you got to feed them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of the mentality that they took, was that, well, let's hurry up and feed them, you know, or because we got other things to do.
Yeah, take care of it. And
so some people took advantage of it, you know, and so we were able to, you know, the Conservation Corps group were able to do more. More people were able to see the types of the impact we have on the community. And I think the Corps grew exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
From a small Conservation Corps that at that time was 6 years old to now we're starting our 26th year, and extremely diverse in the types of projects and work that we do. At one point, we even ran our own daycare center. It just didn't fit the model of what we do, but you know, that was something that the Corps was involved in. So I think the LA Conservation Corps took great advantage of opportunities to help young people because of the riots, and it was a big "I told you so" to a lot of people when we were knocking on doors asking for help, and then the riots happened and it was like, we tried to tell you. Mm-hmm. And so I think it helped out, you know, and so from that, like I said earlier, there's been a lot of positive things, and but yeah, some people don't want to talk about it because it's a dark period in LA's history.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't happen just once; it happened twice, and smaller riots in between that are not really spoken about. But you know, it is what it is.
Man, I really appreciate that you're willing to speak about it.
Oh yeah, because if we don't talk about it, you know, we will forget. Mm-hmm. And then if you don't learn from history, you're doomed. What is it? You're doomed to repeat it. So, yeah, it's important to talk about it.
And that's what I hope a lot of people, I mean, I know obviously I don't live in California, but a lot of people have never even heard of that. We went to the Museum of Science and we were talking to a couple people and they had never heard of it. And they were older, 18, 19, 20. Yeah. They never even knew it existed and they live in LA.
Right. Well, I mean, if you ask my daughter who's 18, she won't, she won't, she'll probably ponder about it. And man, I think I heard my dad talk about it or my uncles, but, there's no commemoration of the riots. Nobody wants to remember.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to talk, oh, remember we had riots. I would say probably the first, second, that was about it. The first and second anniversary of the LA riots. After that, nobody mentions it. You don't hear about it. But it's important to talk about it so that it doesn't happen again. And we figure out, well, what do young people need to express themselves about? What are issues that young people have? What's going on in Hollywood? What's going on in South LA? What's going on in San Pedro? What's going on in the Valley? What are the hot topics? So that, we can diffuse situations. And I don't know that that's happening, but I pray that it is.
Yeah. Yeah, but thank you so much.
You're welcome. No worries.